You are listening to the podcast of the Mathias, the largest talent management institute in Hungary. If you want to know more about our mission, please look up our English website at mcc.hu/en or check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels. For interesting articles and analysis of our professors, external contributors, and students, look up our knowledge base at corvinus.hu/en.
Welcome everyone. You are listening to the new podcast episode of the Mathias Corvinus Collegium. My name is Szabolcs Janik, researcher of the Center for Political Science at MCC. In today's episode, we will discuss the current state of the Serbia-Kosovo relations and their impact on the broader Balkan region. And I have the honor to welcome Mr. Misha Djurkovic, director of the Institute of European Studies, a Belgrade-based research institution. He is the author of 30 books and many other contributions, including titles like Dark Corridors of Power, The Illusion of the European Union, or Conservatism and Conservative Parties. He earned his PhD in philosophy at the University of Belgrade in 2005. Previously, among other positions, he was an advisor of the Prime Minister of Serbia. Dear Misha, thank you for accepting our invitation.
Dear Janik, thank you very much for inviting me, and I really do have to express huge gratitude for MCC for inviting me and giving me possibility to be with you here and to meet so many good colleagues during these days.
The pleasure is ours, and thank you once again. So, what are the Belgrade-Pristina relations like today, and what is the general framework of the bilateral relations?
So, as you know, from the position of Serbia, we don't speak about bilateral relation like Hungary, which belong to the countries who recognize independent Kosovo. For Serbia and I think still majority in the United Nations, Kosovo is not independent state. And actually part of the whole this process is the fight about the future position of Kosovo within UN. One of the things that are at stake and which are at the table is the position or the possibility for Pristina or independent Kosovo to join to international associations, organizations, and especially United Nations. So, but when we speak today after actually it was 4 days after the meeting in Ohrid. Which is exactly ongoing process that started, or we could call that the last stage for the time being, actually, of the Belgrade-Pristina negotiations held and led by the under the auspices of European Union. And enhanced or helped gravely or pushed, we could say it in different words, by a special representative or special envoy of United States, Mr. Gabriel Escobar. And internally in Europe, we are speaking about a project of so-called Franco-German proposal for kind of normalization of relationship between Belgrade and Pristina, that in the meantime became officially European proposition, and which is the process led now by Special Representative of European Union, Mr. Lajčák, and of course last episodes in Brussels on 28th of February and recent one in Ohrid were held by Mr. Borrell himself. So we are, with a couple of words only, there is a proposition within 11 points, and now it is officially available at the web page of External Service of, let me say, Foreign Affairs Ministry in a way of European Union, in which you could see some kind of, let me say, agreement, or as Mr. Vučić would say, draft of agreement. That's also a problem of interpretation. That is, according to the Western sources or mediator sources, now officially accepted as the basis for the future process of normalization. It's also there is also another document that is drafted and also accepted by both parties at Ohrid, which is also available at the web page of External Service. There is also political part of the process, and this is the way it is internally perceived in Serbia or presented by President Vučić. He is insisting that actually these are proposition drafts, although he officially said that Serbia stay within the process, accepted that, and so on. And he still insists that the process of implementation is going to last, and that the crucial for the process of implementation is finally that Kurti accepts the forming of so-called community of the Serbian municipalities, which for the time being hasn't been accepted, although it is the only obligation that Pristina had since 2013, according to Brussels agreement. On the other hand, and I'm finishing introductory intervention with it, there is a very strong criticism within Serbia proper. There is a strong opposition to what President Vučić accepted. His PR strategy is based on the fact that he didn't sign anything, although, for example, Mr. Escobar said we don't need any signature for the time being. It's important that he officially said that Serbia accepted process. And there is a strong criticism from internal opposition in Serbia that he broke the constitution, that he didn't have a mandate to negotiate anything of that. So we are exactly within the actual and current state of these political and legal phases.
Yes, the quotation marks were not read out at the first question regarding the bilateral relations. We rather should call it maybe dialogue, which is a more proper word.
I'm joking a little bit, but it's, of course, even as you know, definitions and terms are still, as European Union always insists that these are non-status-based issues, including these negotiations, but definitely within that, even defining the terms, as we all know from political sciences, also means some position and idea about how we perceive that.
Exactly. What specific steps were taken in recent years towards the settlement of the Kosovo issue? You already mentioned some aspects, but what were these steps and what was the progress that could be seen in the issue?
Just to inform your respected listeners that yesterday we had very nice seminar here with the staff seminar of the Mathias Corvinus College, in which we passed through all of these phases, especially focusing on the process from 2013 onward. And just let me repeat some of the basic phases. Everything started with the so-called Integrated Border Management Agreement, which was defined even before SNS Progressive Party coming to power. But actually the first thing that the government of, at that time, Prime Minister Dačić, but actually the whole government was led and controlled by Mr. Vučić from last 11 years already, first introduced so-called integrated border management, which is some kind of de facto state border that is functioning between Serbia and Kosovo. Another phase, and it was the most important move, was so-called Brussels Agreement. Brussels Agreement is, we could say, comprehensive agreement signed and accepted by Serbia, Pristina under the mediation of the European Union at that time. And de facto, it is consisted of the several measures and the points which were implemented in the next 10 years, in which Serbia accepted to de facto abolish so-called parallel institutions, as international community used to call them. And these are institutions of the Republic of Serbia, present and active at the space of Kosovo, and especially at the north of Kosovo, which was at the focus of Serbian administrations after 2000. De facto, as we know, Serbian leadership was negotiating and searching for some kind of solution that would include, I would say they call that different way, but people define that as a partition. We could say that many of the Serbian leaders were prepared to accept independence of the south of Kosovo and even joining to Albania at some point if the mutual agreement can be made. While north of Kosovo was for a long time until 2013 functioning de facto as a part of the rest of the Serbia. So what Mr. Vučić accepted, and in a way we could say that he was supported by Western community to come to power in order to deliver on those issues, were actually series of concrete steps, and we could just briefly repeat them. One was the position of the police and judiciary, which were functioning as a separate entities before 2013, actually. Another issue was position of the municipalities, because before 2013 and the Brussels Agreement, local municipality leadership and regimes were elected by local Serbs and some other minorities according to the laws of Republic of Serbia, and they were being financed directly from the Belgrade and so on and so on. So Vučić accepted this system of elections and the regime to be abolished, and Serbian municipalities, actually Serbian communities, were encouraged to accept elections according to the laws of Kosovo or the Kosovo constitution at that time. And it's not only for the southern parts, but also for the northern parts like Mitrovica, Zubin Potok, and other municipalities at the north. Another important step was accepting the separate telephone code for Kosovo. This was from 2016, and now Kosovo has 383 separate code, and also Serbian teleoperators that used to work at the Kosovo field according to Serbian laws accepted now to be registered according to Kosovo laws. And for Serbs, the most important is that now they are, when they call their relatives in central Serbia, they are using de facto position of roaming and so on, like in any independent state. There are also other sorts of, let me say, especially electricity was a very big issue, which was solved, let me say, in 2020, according to what international community wanted. And this is especially important concerning the Lake Gazivode and functioning of electricity system of Serbia. And we got some new company called Kosovo Electricity North, which is now functioning also according to the laws of the Kosovo, and also General United Electric System of Kosovo is Serbia accepted that they joined to General European Network, and now they are functioning in a close cooperation with the electoral system of Albania. What else? There are many other concrete steps, including recent development on car plates, because there was Serbs use car plates of the state of Serbia. There, first it was abolished as a possibility for the people living south of Iber, south of Mitrovica. And now, in the last crisis, Vučić accepted also that Serbia will not issue any more further plates for people living at the north of Kosovo, which means that eventually in the future they will as well accept Kosovo registering plates. Actually, when we speak about the specific systems, there are only health system and education system, which also includes position of so-called Pristina exiled university, which is university in north of Mitrovica. And in many ways, we could say that although Vučić didn't deliver as Germans were expecting to finish everything within the couple of years, he stretched the whole process for 11 years for the time being, but more or less all the internal steps were finished. And now there is a pressure from Americans and European Union especially to even come to some kind of, let me say, I wouldn't say final solution, but to something which at this phase is according to Wolfgang Ischiger's plan about the position of the two Germanys, in which Serbia will de facto accept independent Kosovo, not insist on any way to represent Kosovo internationally, to allow also Kosovo to join to international associations, United Nations, and so on. And there is talk about possibility of postponing that for another 10 years to leave the recognition of the mutual recognition between Kosovo and Serbia for another 10 years, but for the time being to accept de facto that it is functioning as a separate state.
And what can be Vučić's strategy in the medium run? Is he trying to win further time to do this de facto recognition of Kosovo, or what can be the final goal for him?
When we speak about the final goal at the Balkans, it's for let me say, most of the politicians is to survive another week. Still, the general international environment is very fuzzy, very problematic in many ways. We have a lot of internal problems, all of our countries, including demography, massive migration of the quality part of the, especially youth, is going in big numbers into the Germany, especially Sweden, and anything else. So in that sense, there's a lot of problems to survive, basically, and to try to get some new, better place within this ongoing turmoil that is going even in Europe with the wars and the new financial economic crisis that is about to start. So when we speak about some goals, I would be very precise and blunt. For many politicians at the Balkans, the goal is to survive another half year, really. And that's why elections are very useful, because with one elections, you get the whole year in some kind of intermediate. But generally, you could say that, like, even political leaders before him, he's trying to buy the time to maybe wait for some changes. Yesterday we mentioned actually that the Trump period was quite good comparing to the period of the Democratic administration. We didn't have such a strong pressure on Kosovo issue, on many other issues, and you could really relax a little bit, try to what is really, and everybody supports that in Serbia, trying to make the environment more peaceful, more prosperous and functioning. So concerning the relationship with Albanians, we are supporting any kind of the, economic, social cooperation between young people, trying really to improve the possibility infrastructure. And it's not the problem for anybody. For us, the problem is the status and the pressure that Serbia give away indefinitely any pretension to its own territory. So Vučić's strategy is very complex, which comes out of his position. On one hand, he's trying, of course, slowly to stretch this process as long as it's possible, and to try to find some red lines. For the time being, those red lines we will see if it's going to stay. One is Kosovo in United Nations. For the time being, this is unacceptable for him. And another one, and as I said, this is the basis of his internal PR strategy, I didn't say anything. Internally, he has the problem because we could say like that 80% of the population of people who are voting is very strongly against any, how should I say, further givings concerning the Kosovo issue. And so any of his coming out into the meeting demands of the West is meaning that he's losing voters at home. On the other hand, the mechanism that he used now by controlling his internal political structure and media at this moment, according to some polls, are coming to be insufficient. So he has very complex task on one hand to try to convince his nationally orientated voters that he is not actually giving too much to the West, and on the other hand to convince the West that he already gave too much and that he will have problem at home. So he's constantly trying to balance between those two demands, but the problem is that it's becoming harder and harder to survive and to sell that.
Turning back to the European Union, the EU is seemingly not in a hurry to welcome Serbia among its members. How does the issue of Kosovo influence Serbia's accession process?
Yesterday, we also spoke about we could say the sad history of the Serbia-EU relationship and how we came actually from the position of the years after 2000 immediately, when there was a strong consensus in Serbia, especially among the youth, among the educated and middle-class people, that we want to go to EU and to join to EU. This consensus started to decrease after 2008, after the recognition of Kosovo from the biggest European powers. And now you could see with any day this is going down, very radical decrease in the support of EU. There are several reasons for that. One is, of course, the constant pressure of EU, still double standings on position, for example, of Kosovo and Republika Srpska, and many problems that we continue to have. Like people see that the whole process of European integration is much less connected with the values in which we hope to be getting with the help of European Union, like traditional freedom of law, freedom of speech, rule of law, economical development. This is completely off the table. EU is unfortunately interested in deliveries on geopolitical situation. And even you got this is not really very nice for the PR of EU. Recently, a lot of scholars are speaking about so-called stabilocracy, which is very much helped by EU at the West, that instead of promoting Copenhagen criteria in the recent 5-6 years, EU just wanted to have some kind of stability and not too big demands from the people at the field, which resulted not only in Serbia, but generally in all the Western Balkan countries that are still kind of in the process of negotiations, radical disillusion when we speak about EU. First, everybody is more than aware that we will not join EU in the next 10 years or if ever. Even the good pupils like Albania and North Macedonia didn't get much out of that. And we understood actually that we are officially in the process, but de facto it is at some kind of, let me say, stalk position. And in the meantime, you have to survive, of course. Generally, there is, of course, a lot of speak about enlargement fatigue. We know that there is no consensus with EU, especially Germany, Holland, France are not very eager to accept further candidates, to accept the further members in the future. And on the other hand, we are, we have our own fatigue because we are in the process of 23 years for the time being, and we don't see any solution or ending within next 10 years. And also with that, you have Kosovo. When you ask people in Serbia, would you give Kosovo for EU, 80% of the people would clearly say no. So that's why we don't see some big prospects from EU at that moment, which doesn't mean that actually any connections or any cooperation within electricity infrastructure is not welcome. Of course it is, and we continue to be part of those things. But concerning the full membership, we don't see some big prospects.
How are the other Balkan countries impacted by the Kosovo issue? And do they have a special interest in the settlement process?
Well, we already mentioned that we have this two-dimension process. On one hand, you have a bunch of initiatives, of which some are regional, some are Germany-driven, some are USA-driven, and so on, like Berlin process, which was focused very much on infrastructure, actually, a general development of the field. You have this American initiative on open Balkan or mini Schengen, which was strongly accepted and promoted by Aleksandar Vučić and Mr. Rama, especially Prime Minister of Albania. North Macedonia joined, also Montenegro shows the interest for that and so on. So generally, when you take a look about all those processes in which you have normalization of the economy and many other stuff, you could say that there are some progresses that for young people from Sarajevo, I don't know, Skopje, even Pristina, they like to come to Belgrade, they like to visit, I don't know, Exit Festival and so on. Business is functioning very well, normally, and so on. On the other hand, you have geopolitical and status ideas and traditionally inherited, let me say, nationalist discourse, which are very welcome and used by any politician, starting from Croatia onward. I mean, in Croatia, as a part of the folklore, you have to speak bad about the Serbs and Serbia to be elected. We are joking, it's just a business. So everybody understands Vučić is doing the same and so on. So you have a lot of those, let me say, folklore inherited issues that are connected with some kind of status problem. As you know, generally, when you speak about Bosnia and Herzegovina, there are constant problems within that. A Kosovo issue is open. Macedonia, although with Prespa agreement and some change within internal constitutional system, there is some ease for the time being, but they have a lot of problems with Bulgarians that are conditioning them for the further progress and so on. So there's a lot of traditional problems that are at the stake there, and which I hardly can see how could be solved for everybody's satisfaction in the future. So that's why I think Balkans will continue to have a lot of open problems in the future as well.
And my last question would be, is there any implication of these developments for Hungary?
Well, first of all, when you take a look about relationship between Hungary and Serbia, you could say that I think the Hungary is the strongest supporter of the Serbian integration. And generally, Hungary is, as you see, reminding that there are other people in Europe that we should not forget and so on. So Hungary, of course, is interested for many reasons, very logical reason, not only because of Hungarians living in Serbia, it's still a substantial community of 250,000 people and so on, but also because of the good relationship and generally because Eastern Europe is in a way, all the countries are becoming some kind of allies to the Hungary and Poland for defending traditional values. On the other hand, also, Hungary has done quite a good job with investments in the region. It's present for the last 20 years. OTP is the second biggest bank in Serbia, which really enhanced it functioning very well. And I think that's also why there is the interest of Hungary. And there is interesting political move, if I could say, improved connections between President of the government here, Orban, and President of Republika Srpska, Dodik. In several of the cases, Hungary announced that it will veto any move to further sanctions to Republika Srpska and so on. So generally, but also Hungary is present in Macedonia, in Montenegro, in Croatia as well. And I think that the politics of the Hungary toward the Balkans generally is pretty wise and pretty successful from the position of the Budapest.
Thank you very much, Professor Jurkovic, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts about the current state of the Serbia-Kosovo dialogue and its broader impact on the region.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dear listeners, thank you for following our podcast, and please stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this MCC podcast episode. For further media content, please look up our English website at mcc.hu/en or look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you want to read more by our professors, external contributors, and students, check out our knowledge base at corvinus.hu/en.